Mizmor LeDavid, Anoi Roi Lo Exar, Bino Desher Bitsene, Ame Menuchot Yanchilene, Nafshi Shovev Yanchene, Bemagli Tzedek Laman Shemo, Gam Ki Elech Begetel Mavet Lo Irora Ki Ata Imadi, Shiftachum and Shaftacha Hamayinachumuni, Tarach Lefanai Shalcha Neged Zorah, Deshata B'Shem Roshi, Kosi Ravaya, Octova Hesed Yurdafuni Kol Yemechaya, V'Shafti Bedanoi L'Orech Yamim. A song of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. God causes me to lie down in lush pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. God restores my soul and guides me in righteous paths for his name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in full view of my adversaries. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for the length of days. We come together today to mourn the passing of Frances Sensor, a beloved mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, and great-great-grandmother. In many ways, it is fitting that Frances passed away just as we read the parshiot that describe the end of Yaakov Avinu's life. Yaakov, like his father and grandfather before him, was a builder of the Jewish people. However, he alone amongst the Avot passed on God's teachings to all of his children. And also, unique amongst the Avot, Yaakov bridged generations and transmitted Torah directly to his grandchildren. Frances, who was born here in 1921, one of three children, embodied all of these qualities. She was a longtime dedicated member and trustee of Warrensville Center Synagogue, and later Oheb Tzedek Cedar Sinai Synagogue. Her vision and the generosity of her and her brother Stanley paved the way for her shul's successful move and ensured its survival. Frances would often share stories with me about the shul's past and her hopes for its future. She was, in many ways, the keeper of the shul's history and legacy, always ensuring that it remained true to its mission. Frances and Stanley were not just builders of their shul. They also supported numerous other vital communal institutions, including the Hebrew Academy of Cleveland. Frances also took great pride in her family, which she built with her husband, Alan. They had three children, Elaine, Arlene, and Fred. The untimely passing of Fred and then Elaine was difficult for Frances, but she took comfort in her family. She enjoyed a close relationship with her brother Stanley and was devoted to caring for him in the last years of his life. She also enjoyed close relationships with her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren. When I attended Frances's 100th birthday, I saw firsthand how much joy spending time with her great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren brought to her face. Just asking her about them could bring a smile to her face. Frances felt so strongly about family that when I arrived in Cleveland 6.5 years ago single, she encouraged me to meet someone to get married nearly every time that we spoke. I never really asked why, but she told me, and she was right, that I needed to marry a fellow New Yorker. When she found out through Gila that I was dating my now wife, she regularly asked me for updates, and she took great joy in our wedding and the birth of our children. The years after Stanley's passing were difficult for Frances. But throughout this time, she was blessed to be cared for and surrounded by a family that truly embodied the Torah's words, V'hardarta p'nei zaken. Even during this time, her family brought her great joy, along with the sight of children. As Frances's memory worsened, she often struggled to remember who I was when I would come visit her. I understood this and simply used to try to remain in the moment when speaking with her. I stopped expecting that she would recognize me when I visited. A few months ago, I stopped by to see her with my 2-year-old son, whom she'd only met once or twice before. I was surprised that at the sight of him, she recognized me. Francis's innate connection with those who would come after her and her commitment to building institutions to provide for them overcame the limits of her ailments. May Francis's commitment to community and family and her ability to reach across generations be an inspiration for us all, and may her memory be a blessing. I'd now like to call up Rabbi Heiken to say a few words.
We are here to pay respect, say goodbye to Feigl Bas Rebelio. It is also a special schus, special merit, because our sages say elders deserve respect, deserve honor, because many hardships went through their life and they overcome it. Person who merited to live over 100, to see generations following the right path, deserves honor. That's our schus. And Shlomo HaMelech, the King Solomon, says, a posuk, V'hachai yitein elibri. Those who are alive should take a lesson from those who pass away. There are certain things that all of us could learn from the Nifteres, Feigl Bas Rebelio. Even though we can't compare ourselves, she lived an outstanding life, but there is something that we could learn. We could learn a concept called derech eretz for people, not only for elders, not only for parents, grandparents. She behaved derech eretz for people. There's a certain respect that she gave to anybody who even didn't know her. If you're a human being, there's a certain respect that came out from her that we should take a lesson from. It's unbelievable, those who knew her, how you could walk away with something learning, some uplift when you saw her, when you spoke to her, when she spoke to you. For example, the devotion, giving so much of herself to the family. Of course, she got respect from her family, but it's a two-way street. She respected her family. She, besides caring for her family, she gave much respect to her family. She was very proud of her family, which shined, and everybody that knew her walked away with very uplifting level. Another important thing is, in the Jewish history, there were three great people, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, very close to Daniel. The king said, if you don't bow down to my idol, you're going into the furnace. Fine. Okay, we're going. Then he started to tease them. Are you coming back? Will your God come to rescue? They said, anybody who gives up his life on Kiddush Hashem, sanctify Hashem's name, at the same time he's thinking about his life insurance, Hashem will rescue me, doesn't come back. So Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah went thinking that it's one way. Nevertheless, they were dressed in Shabbos-dike clothes. Why? If in their mind, that's it, it's one way, why couldn't they take cheap clothes. Why the Shabbos clothes? Because a person should never give up his dignity. The Nefteres, that dignity that when she was young, when she was middle-aged, when she was old age, she passed 100, she had all the right not to care for everything. No, not an inch, not a millimeter did she lose and give up her dignity, whatever it meant, her speak, her walk, her behavior. So this is a tremendous lesson that we could all walk away to care for ourselves, for self-respect. The relationship of the family is a tremendous chus that she saw, and of course, she will be what's called a melitza yeshoro, a good advocate, first of all, her daughter who was so devoted to everybody in this community and the whole family for this community. The Bennetts do so much, but the head of the family, Mrs. Bennett, should have a refuah shlema, and she should feel good and continue with more strength all the good things. May she go to the Kisei HaKoved, to the Hashem, to the throne of the glory of Hashem, and say, please send Moshiach immediately. We need to have a Geula. We don't want to hear anymore but any kind of tzores, only simchas.
I'd like to call up Rabbi Eli Dessler to share a few words.
We are here to pay tribute, respect, a kavod achron to Fega Bas Rebelio Halevi, Mrs. Frances Senser. I really got to know her in the last probably 8 or 9 years, and there's a lot to learn, as Rabbi Chaikin Shlita said. We say Friday evening, Eishes Chayil Miyimtza, woman of valor, an accomplished woman. Many say that it's allegorically it's the Shechina, the Torah, the Shabbos, but the very fact that a Jewish woman was chosen to be the vehicle for these lofty concepts is a true tribute to her. In addition, the 22 letters each stanza represents from the Aleph Beis, those were the same 22 letters that the Torah was written. What do I mean that Mrs. Senser was an accomplished woman? There were many, many times that I was in the house and other places with her. As Rabbi Chaikin said, she retained her dignity. She was always made up perfectly, dressed perfectly. A queen, doted on by her myriad of family members. She was so proud, so very proud of Morachana and her decades of teaching and inspiring the hearts and minds of so many preschoolers. We were zocha to be able to have that our preschool at the Hebrew Academy is named the Eliyahu and Masha Knapp Preschool. When Stanley and Mrs. Senser came many times to the school, especially during construction time, with a walker and with a wheelchair, going through the building, it was just simply astounding at their devotion and their dedication, all for the kids. Mrs. Senser so many times recalled and was so proud of that the fact by her mother's funeral, the rabbis of Telshe Yeshiva were on the dais at the head. She was so devoted, she used to tell me that she used to prepare a porridge or a cereal for her mother and father, and there were times that Stanley beat her to it. But she was the kavod, the derech eretz, how she spoke about her parents, was a lesson to be learned. I once told her that she was blessed with longevity because of exactly that. Honor thy father and mother, so you should have the reward is arichas yamim. There was a time that once or twice that they had to move out of their home for a couple of days to a hotel. And we brought her some food. She would not eat before Stanley took his first bite. She used to take this soft rye bread, cut the crust all the way around, and give it to him piecemeal in small bites. And when he said he had enough, she says, "No, Avrum, es nachabissel, another bite, another bite." She really cared so deeply for him, extremely well. I mean, it was just mind-boggling. And after he passed away, it was a difficult pill for her to swallow, very difficult. She used to talk about him, and tears came to her eyes. She was so close, extremely close. And it went the other way, too, because Stanley valued her, what she did for him, and the devotion from him to her. It was like a Musar Sefer, how they spoke to each other, how they treated each other. When she was 101, just 2 years ago, I came into the house one day and she says to me, "You got to get my great-great-grandchild into camp." Listen, at 101, you don't. So I rest assured her that don't worry. Her memory will be eternally remembered in the halls of the Hebrew Academy with the Francis Sensor Educational Wing. We have the picture when she came and dedicated that wing. She was so proud, but then again, she again referenced the kids that her daughter, Morachana, taught. She reminded me that Ted, Olav Shalom, used to come and blow the shofar. And I told her that we have pictures of that in the school. Her life was her family. Her family treated her with the utmost respect and was always there for her. Always. There were times that she said she wanted to move, and we tried to explain to her that it's best for her to be near her family. They come in and in every time, so many times a day. But I guess it was hard to make a change, but finally she really adapted to it, and she loved her home. She was so proud of the garden in the back, the view in the backyard, the paintings on the wall that each one had a history. I can only say that the schusim that the family has for taking such good care of her, so devotedly, so every hour of the day. And I know the last thing that Chaim wants is to be pointed out, but let me just suffice it to say that the Olam Haba and the schusim that the family has, and you, Chaim, should be a schus for her neshama, and she should be a melitz yosher for Morachana to have a refuah shlema for the whole family that need, whether it's shidduchim, whether it's refuahs, yeshuas. She should go to the Kisei HaKavod and say, "That's it, let Mashiach come," and everybody should have what they need. Yehi zichra brucha.
Ryan Sensor is now going to come up and share a few words.
Hi, everyone. When I was in college, a birthday, a holiday, something would come around, and I would get the package. A nondescript box with a bounty of homemade sweets from Grandma. All very unusual, all very perfect in their way. And I would tell my friends, you have to try this. And of course, everyone would say, yes, my grandmother too. Everyone bakes something so special. And I'd say, no, I don't think you really get it. You have to try this. And they'd say, no. And I would just grab them, take the cookie, the coconut square, and just get it in their mouth in some way. And then I would see the expression fall over them, the shock, the wonder, the pleasure and joy. And I'd see now they get it. And many years I tried through all my friends, interactions, to describe who Grandma was. And I always came back to those moments that they could understand the words I was saying, but they couldn't really get it until they had that primary experience, that direct experience of her, of someone in the same breath who could show you the most tender love and the toughest love somehow in the same sentence. And I've always tried to describe this love for Grandma, and I've realized that I just keep it for myself. She had 3 wonderful kids, all artists. So Grandma must have been an artist then herself, right? What was her art? We can all imagine what that was. I think part of it was the ability to love each of us individually in our own way and in her own way, to make us feel that no matter how many people she loved, as that number grew and grew, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, that it was a special relationship we each had with her and she with us. And I think if she had one power, it was this incredible power to remember, not just the facts of her life and history, but to be thinking about each of us all the time, wherever we were, to remember that we existed, to be thinking about our futures, to be having hope for us. I think of the thing I most learned from her was not just the overall power of survival, but the mission to survive in order to experience the next joy. Whenever I would go off to an experience or a country that she was worried about, why don't you just, stay home, enjoy New York City, she'd always tell me, watch your back, watch your back. And I knew what she meant. She didn't mean be overly anxious and don't enjoy what you're doing. She meant enjoy everything what you're doing and make sure you survive and get out of it so you can experience the next joy ahead of you. She always lived to see the next joy. When I think about this Shabbat that has just passed, this Shabbat is the first Shabbat without Francis Sensor on earth in over 100 years. It is amazing to think about that. It is hard to think about all the joys that will come next, that she won't be there for. But we will carry her with her into those joys. And for me, I can say so much of that ability to have joy, to know joy, to value the time to create space for joy in our lives, so much comes from her. I want to say, lastly, thank you. We can all thank her in a million ways. I want to thank her for the love she showed my father for all the years he needed her. She was always his best friend, decade after decade, lifetime after lifetime. She supported him, loved him like the way she does all of us. And I just want to thank her for that love she gave to him and all of us. Thank you.
Scott Miller is now going to come up and share some words.
Good afternoon. Just want to give you a quick story. We got in very late last night. There was multiple hour delays at the airport. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to make it. Eventually, we were cleared to leave, and as we boarded the plane, there were signs all over saying, "Today you are flying with Fran." So it turns out the name of our plane was Fran. So I guess they name planes now, but we just wanted to say thank you, Grandma, for making sure we got here safely. Our grandmother passed away just shy of her 104th birthday. I personally don't know anybody who's ever lived that long. But Frances Sensor's life wasn't measured in how many years she was here. It was defined by the quality of a beautiful life lived. She was the matriarch of our family. She was a strong presence in every room she entered, even in her final days, still giving instructions, insisting that Chaim remain next to her at all times, unable to leave. But with that toughness, there was also an incredible tender and loving side. She was up to date on everything going on in her family's lives, and it's a pretty big family. It kept her young and brought her tremendous joy. As kids, we visited her and my grandfather all the time. There was always something amazing being cooked. The smell of good food was everywhere. She waited at the door to greet us. She gave us a big schmeck and a hug. She would say a bunch of words in Yiddish or Hebrew, and then immediately say, "Go visit your grandpa." She would say, "Hey, the kids are here." And he would mumble something. She gave us such a warm and loving welcome. It was infectious. During the meal, Grandma would just watch everybody eat, making sure we stuffed ourselves enough. And after, as Ryan said, the pastries would come out. The cakes, the pastries, everything homemade, everything delicious. She watched over everyone like she did her entire life. It was her role. She embraced it and wouldn't have it any other way. She was the center of our family for all of us. What a big responsibility. What an impressive job she did. Now, our auntie, also a pillar of strength and family and love, will take the mantle as our family's matriarch and will lead us with the same strength and vigor that her mother did. Our grandmother's left an indelible mark on all of our lives. We are grateful for the impact she had on us all. What a gift. She always carried herself with dignity and with class. She was a beacon of strength and love. While we are filled with emptiness and grief, we are incredibly blessed to have had her in our lives for such a long and meaningful time. I was so proud to tell everyone that my grandmother was 100 years strong. And it was a rock-solid 100 years. She was still razor-sharp, moving around well after 100. She truly embodied the definition of a full life. With the help of a couple of guardian angels, she was determined to make it home before crossing over. Well, Grandma, you made it, and now you're home. For your entire life, you lovingly took care of your family. Now it is time to relax and enjoy their company once again. Mission accomplished, a beautiful life accomplished.
Chaim Bennett will now share a few words.
So I actually have a few notes people have asked me to read. So we'll start with that. Firstly, this is from Penina Lipton. Sorry. Grandma, in the last few months of your life, you mused with Mom about being ready to die, that you felt you didn't have much purpose just sitting around. I didn't really think about it much because we were so happy to have you for so long. Last week, when I came to see you in the hospital, I figured it out. You were there to keep on giving, to teach us that giving isn't only what one physically does. Your whole life was giving. You gave so much of yourself to everyone. You taught us about giving unconditionally and with love. You also taught us about giving it over to Hashem. You had very strong emunah that it is Hashem who's in charge of everything. Thank you so much for giving me the privilege of such a close relationship and of being with you as you moved on to the Olam HaEmes, where I'm sure you'll have a very special place. The next note is from Grandma's rabbi, who had previously lived here, who was leading Cedar Sinai Synagogue, Rabbi Truboff. Grandma enjoyed a very close relationship with him. He and his family immigrated to Israel. And on Friday, he called me up before Shabbos and had me read the following letter. The letter was read, and Grandma passed away. Francis, I can't thank you enough for the incredible love and support you showed my family. From day one, you took Jen and me in and treated us as if we were part of your own family. I only learned later that you have done this. I'm sorry. I only learned later that you've done this throughout your life. You didn't have to save the shul, but that's exactly what you did through your commitment and your support. In our work together, building the community, what often made me the most proud was knowing that the shul's successes would bring you as a sense of pride and put a smile on your face. When the community needed you most, you did what you have always done. You stepped up and took responsibility when no one else would. You have shouldered burdens so few can even imagine. When those who you loved needed your help, you picked them up and carried them, whether it was your husband, your son, your brother, or your daughter. You put them on your shoulders and cared for them to ensure that they would have what they needed to survive and thrive in this world. As you know, it is traditional to describe a Jewish wife and a mother as an Eshes Chayil, a woman of valor, and it is without question that you're the embodiment of an Eshes Chayil. But it's important to realize that the word Chayil also has a special connotation to it. It is close to the word Chayal, meaning soldier, and it means strength. You are the ultimate Eshes Chayil because you are the strongest person I know. An Eshes Chayil doesn't just do acts of chesed, she actively looks out for others in need of chesed, as you always did. She recognizes their needs even before they do and does her best to be there for them. I'm so grateful and feel so blessed that you chose to share your strength and love with Jen and I and our children. You always said you were proud to call me your friend, and it meant the world to me that you felt that way. In all my years as a rabbi, I can think of no higher compliment anyone has ever given me. Though we wish people that they should live until 120, rarely do we believe such a thing is possible. You may be the one exception. That said, you have lived an incredibly full life, surrounded by an unbelievably loving family who think the world of you. Please do not feel you have any responsibilities left on this earth, and know that your family, who loves you so dearly, only wants you to be at peace. Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi Truboff. Okay. Thank you so much to everybody who's trekked from far and near to be here today. 103 years. What a long, rich life. It's impossible to aptly describe and eulogize a centenarian, especially our Bubby, somebody who was cognitively sharp and aware just until not too long ago. Being with Bubby for the past week or so as she rested has really imparted to us all that no second of her life was too long, no moment too short. But that each second was really a world in and of itself. Hashem in His kindness had Bubby with us for exactly the amount of time He preordained. Baruch Dein Emes. We've heard about Bubby's resilience and feistiness and her sense of responsibility and involvement in all types of causes, hallmark character traits that she was blessed with and she cultivated to carry her through life. But where does it come from? So Bubby's name Fega is the Yiddish equivalent for the Hebrew word Zipporah. Zipporah was the wife of the greatest leader and teacher of all time, Moshe Rabbeinu. Aside from being the wife of Moshe, Zipporah had her own place in history at a moment that could have had some very serious implications on the formation of our people. The Torah in Shemos, the book of Exodus, teaches us that on Hashem's command, Moshe, Zipporah, and their newborn child were traveling back to Egypt from Midian to be with the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu and his family stopped overnight for lodging. There, the Torah relates how an angel came to kill Moshe for having settled in at his lodging without having performed the bris milah, the circumcision, on his child immediately upon arrival. Seeing Moshe in the grips of death, Zipporah realized why this was all happening. She grabbed a knife, performed the bris on the newborn boy, and Moshe was saved. It's a fascinating story that highlights that action character trait that, like the Zipporah of old, our grandma had. Bubby experienced so many highs and lows throughout her life, and that too is alluded in her name. Fega, the word Fega in Yiddish is translated into English as a bird. Have you ever wondered how a bird weighs just a few ounces, but it can withstand heavy winds? I'm no engineer, but I think that birds can do this not by flying straight through the wind, but rather by dipping and flying below or above the wind, and then getting carried through it. It's that gift of adaptability that gets them from one place to the next. To that end, our Chachamim teach us in Masechtas Tainis, in the Talmud, that La'olam Yehei Adam Rach Kikana. A person should always be flexible as a reed. The adaptability to adapt is so important, and that is what Bubby Fega did. It was constant adaptation growing up during the Depression and having to move so many times because of the lack of finances. It was the greatest display of flexibility as a young married mother, and having her father live in her home for over 12 years after great Bubby Masha passed. It was her all-day involvement and care in helping her children at every stage of their lives. It was accepting and thriving with the challenge of taking care of Papa for 15 years after a stroke left him paralyzed on his right side. It was adaptability to move on after rotator cuff surgery and heart failure that resulted in a pacemaker, and the list goes on. The idea of having Hashem, God, leading her life was not lost on her. Bubby talked about Hashem all the time. Of particular note is what she started around the same time that she voluntarily stopped treatment of bladder cancer due to discomfort associated with the treatments. At that time, Bubby began to be careful about saying Asher Yatzar, the blessing we say after going. The blessing we say after going to the bathroom, she would say at least once a day. And then she said Modani upon wake up as well. That implementation was at around 90 years old. And perhaps we can say helped in having her with us until now. On behalf of the family, we want to thank all the people that were part of Bubby's life, especially those who visited or called or who helped to care for her these past few years. Mommy, thank you for being the absolute paradigm of what the mitzvah of kibbud aim is. Your care for Bubby is legendary. Bubby, we ask forgiveness for anything that was said or not said, or was done or was not done for you. And of course, we grant forgiveness as well. Bubby, in closing, I want to share with everyone that, believe it or not, the topic of driving had dominated our conversations for pretty much the last year. You wanted to go to the DMV to take a driving test, and I kept trying to steer you away. I tried showing you your state ID and telling you that that was your license, but you could see right through it, and you called me out on it. Now you have the opportunity for a journey that's test-free. Please drive up to heaven and act as we say in Yiddish, get it better. An advocate for your family. For the Cleveland community. For the hostages. And for all of our people. Thank you.
Please rise for the Kelmele, which will be recited by Nisim Blum.
El molei rachamim shoichein mameroimim hamtzei Menucha nechayna ale kanefei hashechina b'mahalayis kedoshim utehoyerim kezoyhar harakiya mazihirim haseni yishmas feigo basraveliyahu shehal chaliyo ilama mahavur shanachnu mispalelim b'yad hazikoras nishmasa negane yeden etei menuchasa lochein bal horachamim yastireho b'seiser kinofov li'olamim B'tzerair achayim as nishmasa Adonai hu nachalosa v'sanuach v'shalayim al mishkava v'noemar amen.
This concludes the service. The interment will continue at Lincoln Cemetery.